The Prime Minister looked cheerful enough as she arrived at the meeting of Tory MPs at 6 p.m, expressing mock surprise at the number of journalists packing the corridor outside the room. From outside, we could hear her greeted by applause and the banging of desks as she went in. We heard a roar of laughter as she, or Graham Brady, the chair of the backbench Tory M.P.'s 1922 committee, said something at the start. 12 minutes later there was sustained but not exactly enthusiastic applause. We know what she told them because the Downing Street press office issued the text of the key paragraph. We must think about the message Parliament will send to the European Union this week. I am trying to negotiate the best deal for Britain. I am confident I can get a deal that allows us to strike our own trade deals while having a border with the EU which is as frictionless as possible. But if the Lords' amendments are allowed to stand, that negotiating position will be undermined. And just in case we didn't get the message, Steve Baker, the Brexit Minister, and Robert Buckland, the Loyalist ex-Remainer Solicitor General, came out to tell journalists what she had just said. Baker said, "Do we want a strong Prime Minister or a weak one to negotiate for us in Europe? We will hang together or we will hang separately," said Buckland. Neither of them, possibly, gave quite the impression of determination and defiance that they intended. Theresa May's message reminded me of another Conservative Prime Minister addressing his divided party on the subject of Europe. During the 1997 election campaign, as Tory MPs broke with party policy to declare they would never agree to join a single European currency, John Major scrapped a planned election broadcast and spoke directly to camera himself. "Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, like me or loathe me, don't bind my hands when I am negotiating on behalf of the British nation." A fat lot of good it did him. More and more Tory MPs declared against the single currency, and a few days later they, and Major, were swept away by the Blair deluge. Of course, Theresa May is at a different stage of the electoral cycle, and she is likely to get through the high drama of the votes in the Commons over the next 2 days. Theresa May urges divided Tory MPs to back her in key Brexit votes. The government whips have done their job. Some of the Tory rebels have not been persuaded. Sarah Wollaston, for example, refuses to accept that voting for a soft Brexit makes a Jeremy Corbyn government more likely. But others accept the argument that now is not the time to jog the Prime Minister's elbow as she negotiates in Brussels, especially as defeating the government in the votes this week would probably not have any practical effect. Steve Baker said, when he came out of the meeting, a customs union is a question for a later date. In other words, the message to his fellow Tory MPs is, if you still feel strongly about it, vote for a customs union when the trade bill comes to the House of Commons later in the year. By then, of course, the government hopes to have made some progress in the Brexit negotiations. The chances are, then, that the government will get its way over the next 2 days. It will either reverse the Lords' amendments or replace them with watered-down versions. As the Prime Minister was addressing Tory MPs, some of them were discussing a possible amendment on the customs union drafted by Oliver Letwin, David Cameron's former fixer, and supported by Nicky Morgan, one of the possible rebels. Boris Johnson MP, Labour MP Gisela Stewart and UKIP MP Douglas Carswell addressed the people of Stafford in Market Square during the Vote Leave Brexit Battle Bus Tour on the 17th of May 2016. Their lead line on the tour was, "We send the EU £350 million a week. Let's fund our NHS instead. A man shelters from the rain as he arrives at a polling station in London on the 23rd of June 2016. Millions of Britons voted in the referendum on whether to stay in or leave the European Union. Leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage, reacts at the Leave EU referendum party at Millbank Tower in central London as results indicated that it looked likely the UK would leave the European Union. A young couple painted as EU flags and a man with a sign reading "I'm not leaving" protest outside Downing Street against the voters' decision to leave the EU on the 24th of June 2016. British Prime Minister David Cameron resigns on the steps of 10 Downing Street on the 24th of June 2016 after the results of the EU referendum were declared and the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. Theresa May receives a kiss from her husband Philip, after becoming the new Conservative Party leader on the 11th of July 2016. May became Prime Minister 2 days later, and although she voted to remain in the referendum, was keen to lead Britain's Brexit talks after her only rival in the race to succeed David Cameron pulled out unexpectedly. May was left as the only contender standing after the withdrawal from the leadership race of Andrea Leadsom, who faced criticism for suggesting she was more qualified to be Prime Minister because she had children. British Prime Minister Theresa May delivers her keynote speech on Brexit at Lancaster House in London on the 17th of January 2017, where she spoke about her offer to introduce a transition period after the UK formally leaves the European Union in March 2019. Despite repeating the pro-Brexit mantra of "no deal is better than a bad deal," the Prime Minister claimed she wanted a tone of trust between the negotiators and said Britain was leaving the EU but not Europe. She said there should be a clear double lock needed for the transitional period to make sure businesses had time to prepare for changes to their trading relationships with the EU. British Prime Minister Theresa May in the Cabinet, sitting below a painting of Britain's first Prime Minister Robert Walpole, signs the official letter to European Council President Donald Tusk invoking Article 50 and the United Kingdom's intention to leave the EU on the 29th of March 2017. Soon after triggering Article 50, Theresa May called on the 18th of April for a snap general election. The election would be on the 8th of June, and it came as a shock move to many, with her reasoning to try to bolster her position before tough talks on leaving the EU. Prime Minister Theresa May makes a statement in Downing Street after returning from Buckingham Palace on the 3rd of May 2017. The Prime Minister visited the Queen to ask for the dissolution of Parliament, signalling the official start to the general election campaign. An arrangement of British daily newspapers showing front-page stories about the exit poll results of the snap general election. British Prime Minister Theresa May faced pressure to resign on the 9th of June after losing her parliamentary majority, plunging the country into uncertainty as Brexit talks loomed. The pound fell sharply amid fears the Conservative leader would be unable to form a government. Britain's opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn gives a thumbs up as he arrives at Labour headquarters in central London on the 9th of June 2017 after the snap general election results showed a hung parliament with Labour gains and the Conservatives losing their majority. Brexit Minister David Davis and European Commission member in charge of Brexit negotiations Michel Barnier address a press conference at the end of the first day of Brexit negotiations in Brussels on the 19th of June 2017. British Prime Minister Theresa May speaks on the 22nd of September 2017, in Florence. May sought to unlock Brexit talks after Brussels demanded more clarity on the crunch issues of budget payments and EU citizens' rights. German Chancellor Angela Merkel joins other EU leaders for a breakfast meeting during an EU summit in Brussels on the 20th of October 2017. The EU spoke about Brexit and announced that insufficient progress had been made. DUP Deputy Leader Nigel Dodds walks off after speaking to members of the media as a protester holding flags shouts after him outside the Houses of Parliament on the 5th of December 2017. British Prime Minister Theresa May was forced to pull out of a deal with Brussels after the DUP said it would not accept terms which see Northern Ireland treated differently from the rest of the UK. Theresa May suffers defeat in Parliament over EU withdrawal bill on the 13th of December 2017. The government was defeated by Conservative rebels and Labour MPs in a vote on its key piece of Brexit legislation. MPs amended the EU withdrawal bill against Theresa May's will, guaranteeing Parliament a meaningful vote on any Brexit deal she agrees with Brussels. Ms May's whip supplied pressure on Conservative rebels who remained defiant in the Commons throughout the day, and in the end the government was defeated by 309 votes to 305. Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May arrives to attend the first day of a European Union summit in Brussels on the 14th of December 2017. European leaders discussed Brexit and announced there was finally sufficient progress at the end of the 2 days. Brexit Secretary David Davis gives evidence on developments in European Union divorce talks to the Commons exiting the EU committee in Portcullis House, London, on the 24th of January 2018. French President Emmanuel Macron gestures to Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May after they hold a press conference at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, on the 18th of January 2018. May and Macron agreed a new border security deal, through which the UK will pay more to France to stop migrants trying to reach British shores. The UK and EU agree terms for Brexit transition period on March 19, 2018. The EU and UK however failed to reach an agreement on the Irish border during the successful talks on other Brexit issues. At one point, it was thought that the trickiest one was the vote on the meaningful vote amendment, which is expected between 3:30 and 4 p.m. tomorrow. But the government has tabled an alternative to the Lord's amendment, and it looks as if enough of the rebels will be satisfied with it. That means the crisis has probably been averted this week. But there are many Tory MPs who are unhappy with the Prime Minister's strategy and who are prepared to vote for a softer Brexit. They've been persuaded not to strike yet, and it may be that the government can keep fending them off until it is too late. Or, it may be that the government has simply put off its day of reckoning with the majority in the House of Commons that wants a Brexit that keeps the UK close to the EU. If John Major's "don't bind my hands" plea is any guide, Theresa May's heading for trouble.